What up, cocksuckers? It is the 59th episode. What is it, September? Yeah, that's the month. Great fucking start. September 2nd, 2013. We are amidst a crazy 8-day streak where the UFC is putting on 3 shows, and we had the second of 3 just a couple nights ago. UFC 164, definitely the biggest of the 3 cards, going down in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where we saw a belt change hands for the second time this year. We will talk about that. Also had a bunch of other fun fights on that card. We also, this coming Wednesday, in 2 days, have UFC Fight Night 28 in Belo Horizonte. And we will talk a little bit about that, along with the week in MMA. Let's do this shit, cocksuckers!
You're listening to the MMA Podcast!
That's right, it is the MMA Podcast. If you do want to be a part of the conversation, you are listening live. We love people to jump in and join us. You can call us. The phone number is what it's always been, 213-457-3380. Our Skype chat name, if you want to Skype call us, save me a few pennies. That's the MMA Podcast, all one word. And you can follow us on Twitter, the same handle, at the MMA Podcast. Visit themmmapodcast.com, which I am going to have that website back online this week, so you can finally start checking that for news. So that'll be cool. We also want to thank our listeners tuning in. Thank MMA Mental. Thank the regulars who couldn't make it today. Ross Finkelstein, he's got his first day of school tomorrow. Shout out to Ross. Shout out to the Final Round podcast as well. I think we'll be doing another one of those Wednesday night after the UFC Fight Night 28 cards. Of course, our friend Chris Lowenstein, you can follow him on Twitter at @CLowenstein, always doing something crazy over there. And we, of course, got Officer Allen at Westland Eagle AH. Follow those cool motherfuckers. We are joined tonight by Ramses and Yao. I'll start it off with a resident amateur fighter, the host of Yao's Training Log. It's Yao the Truth. What's up? Where do we find you? How are you doing today, brother?
I'm doing great, actually. It's coming to you from the future on the East Coast. So, I'm Yao the Truth. You can find me on Twitter, Yao_the Truth.
So, September 3rd, you are in the future. Are things good in the future? Have things gotten really terrible? What's it like in the future?
Actually, pretty good. It's very good, actually.
Nice. I'm living in the goddamn past over here in Mountain Time Zone. Yao's in Eastern Time Zone, if people listening are wondering what the fuck we're talking about. And right in the middle, in that little strip of land we call the Central Time Zone, lies the most controversial man in MMA. Like I said last week, Dana and Lorenzo have put a $5 billion hit out on him, dead or alive. They just want this man's head. They want him done. They want to silence him. But the real truth here, to quote Yao's nickname, is they can't stop him, because he's living deep underground in a cavern, spitting out all the MMA conspiracy news you gotta hear. I've been talking enough about his ass. It's Ramses, the Aunt Jimmy Show. What's going on, brother?
Season's greetings, Jake. Yeah,
Season's
today
greetings.
I'm walking down. Yeah, this morning. I'm walking down the streets of Austin, Texas. I see a family of 5 walking towards me. And they're like, "Hey, are you the Aunt Jimmy Show?" on Twitter. And I'm like, yes. We all openly wept and hugged and celebrated the defeat of Clay Guida and Benson Henderson. We just cried all together, just strangers, just meeting on the street randomly. I couldn't believe it. But if you want to join the celebration, follow me on Twitter. The Aunt Jimmy Show. Thank you.
And he is referring both season's greetings. It is Labor Day still in Central Mountain and Pacific time zones. 10:30 currently in the mountains. but also Benson Henderson losing his belt to Tony Pettis. I don't know if I wept openly when it happened, but you know what? I would be lying if I said I didn't get a little teary-eyed when Pettis posted that picture of the belt next to his dad's grave. If you are following the story, current lightweight champion Tony Pettis lost his dad about a decade ago in an armed robbery. His dad was killed. And that's one of the things. Actually, Pettis is a guy I've known about for years, sort of randomly when I was first getting into the sport. MTV put out this show, World of Jenks, that I watched. I think this is like 2007, and it followed current, or at least at the time, an up-and-coming WEC fighter, Tony Pettis, and gave his backstory and everything. And it's, really cool to, when I was first following the sport, have him be a guy that I sort of knew about from some MTV show, but he probably won't make it big time because, he was on MTV, whatever. But now look at the kid. He's the UFC lightweight champion. Not only was that sub against Benson slick, but he was throwing body kicks that Benson had no answer for. Benson was literally just running away from all the body kicks that Pettis was throwing on him. We'll talk about that fight a little later. We do want to recap the whole card, and like we usually do, we're going to start at the bottom and work our way up to Pettis Hendo 2, or Pettis Bendo 2. Once again, a reminder, if you do want to call in, the number's 213-457-3380, Skype the MMA Podcast, or tweet us at the MMA Podcast, and we'll read your tweet on air. And listen to the word on the street, the final round, MMA men, all that shit. Let's get into it. UFC 164 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I guess, like I said, let's start with the prelims, and what may have been the worst Facebook prelim group of fights that I've ever seen. Al Iaquinta pounding Ryan Couture for 15 minutes sort of was a nice thing, but those other two fights, we saw Magnus Sindenblad sub out some bomb, but Soa Paleli, Nikita Krylov, that may have been the worst fight I've ever seen. If you're in the UFC and you're on top and you're in the position to finish, you expect a guy in the UFC to just be raining down terrible punches, hammer fists. These are the best in the world. Instead, you get a couple of bums. Palele was just sort of lying on Krylov, sort of throwing these half-hearted. What did you guys think? I'm usually not the one to say these were bum fights, but holy shit, come on.
It was definitely a fucking bum fight, man. This fight was in slow motion, but it was the worst kind, man. These people, I'd never even heard of either of these gentlemen before. This was total filler. I don't even remember which one won. It got to be totally ridiculous. It was like a horrible bar fight when they forgot to hire a cop for that night.
It's like a bar fight of both dudes. Yeah, it's like a bar fight of both dudes were 20 drinks deep and passing out as they fought.
Right, and the cops were on some drug bust 2 hours away. It was terrible. But we all laughed, right? At least we got a good laugh out of it, and we learned something. Hopefully, it sends a message to everyone else. But this fucking fight. Nothing else to say about it.
Did you catch him, yeah? What did you think of the Facebook card? Wasn't exactly the most entertaining thing we've ever seen.
Yeah, the worst part was that Paleli fight or whatever. Those guys, they really look like they don't belong in the UFC. That was horrible, really bad. But I think Al Iaquinta beating up Ray Couture's son was the highlight of that little prelim card thing.
Yeah, Al Iaquinta looked really good beating up Randy Couture's son. He, I believe, is training out of New York with the Sarah Longo fight team. Said he's going out there sort of trying to fight like a Chris Weidman. He was coming off a loss in his Actually, I think he hadn't fought since he lost the TUF 15 finale to Michael Chiesa, and now he's back almost a year later. He was, I think, going to face Joe Proctor earlier in the year at 159, but it was scrapped as actually both guys got injured, so they just canceled the fight instead of looking for a replacement. Let's move on past the bum Facebook cards to the main card, aired on Fox Sports 1. This at least was a little bit more entertaining. You had Chico Camus defeat Kung Ho Kang via unanimous decision in a fight that Alan and I actually had a debate about for a couple hours about who really won. Camus won the first. I forget who won the first and second, but it went into the third round tied up 1-1. Actually, I think Kang won the first round and Camus won the second. And then in the third round, it was all Kang's round, and Kang was getting ready pretty much to win the fight. He had top control for about 2.5 minutes. And even though Camus had dropped him once before, Kang had really dominated the round until with like 30 seconds left, Camus lands an up kick that allows him to get up and swarm on Kang and really swarm on him at the end of the round. That won him the round and eventually the fight. So Camus wins that one. Hun Gyu Lim, another South Korean, looking impressive, defeating Pascal Kraus in the first round. Just a huge welterweight. I think he's like 6'2", with a crazy reach of like 6'9" or something. So if Lim really can perfect that reach advantage, he's going to be a scary dude. Tim Elliott.
Yum, yum, Lim.
Yum, yum, Lim, cocksucker. Tim Elliott just dominates Louis Gaudino post to post. Gaudino just can't hang in with these guys who are bigger than him. Didn't really look like he had a chance in what was a very, very one-sided fight. And you had Gleison Tibau defeat Jamie Varner via split decision. I'm not going to lie, after the first round and a half, I was needing to take a shower that whole event, and I decided this was the time. I didn't even watch the end of it because it was boring the piss out of me, and I had no intentions to watch it again because it was very boring. But Gleison Tibau did defeat Jamie Varner via split decision. What did you guys think of those four main card, or those four Fox Sports prelim fights before we move on to the main card?
I think.
Go ahead, yeah.
I think the highlight for me was the Lim or Kim guy, the huge welterweight.
Hun Gyu Lim.
He went. Yes, that's his name. He's a scary welterweight. Like if nobody can stop him from being so aggressive, I think he could beat anyone in the welterweight division because he's so big and so aggressive, and he doesn't stop. And the Jamie Varner fight, that fight was good to me. I enjoyed watching it. What's his name? Gleison Tibau. He said on fight night he was about 182 pounds after rehydration and everything. He's a very big lightweight, and he was able to just, muscle around Jamie Varner. I was pulling for Jamie Varner, but Gleison did his thing. So the prelims were actually pretty entertaining.
What do you think, cocksucker?
Yeah, man, I fell asleep for most of these, dude. It was a hard morning, man. Hard times, as Josh Barnett would say. Gleison Tibau, didn't he lose something like 100 pounds, though? Cut 100 pounds or something like that. God bless him. I don't even know who won. But yeah. I gotta
actually
go back and rewatch.
Gleison cut from 255 to make it to lightweight. The guy cuts a lot of weight, but yeah, he cut 100 pounds for the Jamie Varner fight. Somehow made it. I think he came in weighing like 260 something. But yeah, definitely. That's right. But let's move on to the main card. Dustin Poirier and Eric Koch. In the only fight that actually ended up going to a judge's decision on the whole match. Apparently we're not coming through on Ustream, so let me figure out what the fuck's going on Ustream while you cocksuckers talk about Poirier Koch. I'll inject my 2 cents when it's all said and done, when you motherfuckers have given your opinion on it.
Well, I don't know, about you, but Poirier Koch, man, it looked like a work to me. The back and forth, they were kicking out of submissions. It looked like they worked this out. Aren't they friends or something? This seemed juiced to me, man. It looked like they were just going for that fight of the night bonus. It wasn't believable, man. I'm honestly doubting this bullshit.
Yeah, I kind of understand what you mean by they were just going for fight of the night, because, I mean, even before the fight started, after the weigh-ins and everything, everybody's like, oh, it's going to be fight of the night. And then next thing you know, they went fight of the night. But the fight was entertaining. The submission escapes and attempts were great. The striking exchanges were great. It kind of bums me because Eric Koch was actually going to fight Jose Aldo for the title, and he just lost. I think he's on a 2-fight losing streak now, and they were going to have him fight for the title. So that's kind of confusing, but he'll be back. He's a young kid, big featherweight, and has skills, so I'm excited to see where he goes from here. Dustin Poirier, too.
Yeah, I don't really care about these people yet. I don't know, what is it, 155?
45.
45, shit.
Yeah.
They got nothing, man.
I don't know. I mean, I think Dustin, they're both very young in their careers still. So they're going to challenge each other again, or, anyone in the top 5 featherweight division.
You cocksuckers got nothing else on Poirier Koch? I'm trying to figure this out. Come on.
Man, shit. Don't they both look the same? Like, I don't even know, man.
Yeah, I'm
trying here.
They did look identical to one another at first, and we are now on Ustream. Thanks again to Ross Finkelstein for cluing me into what the fuck was going on here. But it's Koch and Poirier. This is a fight that could have gone either way. They normally would have looked exactly like one another, but Koch, I guess, grew out his hair for some reason. I don't know. Both of them were coming off losses. And Poirier was just a more aggressive guy in the first couple rounds. Koch was kind of able to start rallying back at the end after Poirier, I forget exactly what kind of injury he sustained, but he got some sort of injury, wasn't as hype in the third round, but still did enough to win the fight. Do you really think either guys, we had Koch, who was scheduled to fight in a title fight against Aldo. Do you think either guy's really deserving of a title shot?
I'm fucking watching the fight again right now as we speak. Yeah, just because that division's pretty thinned out by now, isn't it? So I guess I don't care which one. I don't even know who won this fight. It doesn't matter. None of this matters. These guys are too similar. They both have the same, level of fighter status. It doesn't matter. I'm sorry. They both got sleeves. I'm done with these guys. That's all I got to say.
I just have to say that division is not thin at all. I mean, it's growing. It's becoming, I forget who said it, but it's becoming like the lightweight division. Like the amount of talent and, great fighters you have in it. But they don't deserve a title shot now. They need to win a couple more fights first, because you have to remember that you have Frankie, Chad Mendez, and Cub Swanson up there, along with Ricardo Lamas. So, and those two guys are underneath the guys I just mentioned. So they don't deserve a title yet, but I do think they will both definitely challenge for the title before they retire.
Yeah, both of them, I believe, are pretty young. Koch is just 24, fighting out of Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and Poirier is also 24. So, yeah, they're both as old as me, cocksuckers. Let's move on. Ben Rothwell and Brandon Vera, and what I believe both of you coined a bum fight on Friday. Look, I try not to call guys bums, but I do agree that neither of these guys really have any chance to threaten the elite of the heavyweight division, or even in Vera's case, the light heavyweight division. You have a guy in Vera who I think has won a single fight in the last 5 years, and that was against Elliot Marshall. And he couldn't even finish Elliot Marshall. I mean, He's 1-4, and yeah, he has lost to some pretty decent guys before that in Shogun Jones and Randy Couture, but Rothwell, just that was so funny how Vera was sort of keeping distance, pacing Rothwell. If it would have gone to a judge's nod, Vera probably would have won by taking the first 2 rounds. But all of a sudden, like, Rothwell gets like I seriously for a minute was scared because I thought Anderson Silva may have killed himself and the ghost of Anderson Silva possessed Ben Rothwell. Because literally, out of fucking nowhere, like halfway through the second round, Rothwell starts doing this awkward dance where he's like, going back and forth, and he's shimmying back and forth, and his head's going back and forth, and Vera, along with everyone watching, is like, what the fuck is going on? Is Ben Rothwell having a seizure? And then he just swarms Vera and knocks him out. I actually thought that this would be the outcome of the fight, that Rothwell would close the distance and swarm Vera and win, but it took him a while. It took him till halfway through the third. But man, that was entertaining, not on the level of these are 2 amazing fighters and this is a war and the winner gets a title shot. This was just an entertaining fight with Rothwell doing his dance and then swarming and knocking out Vera. What did you guys think of it?
Yeah, man, when Rothwell started to fucking break dance and pop lock, you knew it was all over, man. I thought it's like, even though he beat Vera's ass, at that moment he lost the fight. Like, I'm sorry, Rothwell. It was ridiculous. I'm rewatching it right now. It was in round 3. Can you believe that fight even went to a round 3? Like, these fucking guys, man. Nobody remembers this fight. Nobody will remember this fight. It meant nothing. But
I'm gonna remember that fight forever. I'm gonna remember that fight forever. Because
because Ben Rothwell made a complete fool of himself in the
Ben Rothwell is the greatest MMA fighter of all time. I was going to save it for later, but I'm going to go ahead and say it now. Ben Rothwell is Fedor 2.0. Ben Rothwell is the real White Anderson Silva. I'm sorry, Brian Ebersol. Ben Rothwell is not just like, he's one of the best ever. He is by far the greatest MMA fighter to ever grace the sport. And that's all I think I need to say.
The difference between him and Tim Boesch. Ben Rothwell, the only reason this fight is going to remember is because he did the fucking truffle shuffle midway through. That's all I got to say.
If you're ever at an event where Ben Rothwell's signing and you get an autograph, save it. That thing's going to be worth millions at some point. He is really the greatest fighter of all time. Yeah, what do you think of the fight?
The fight was I appreciated what Ben Rothwell did. If you look at it, it's like he paid. I think he gave Brandon Vera a false sense of security in the first and second round. He was not doing too much. He was staying active, but he wasn't, closing the distance and attacking.
That's right.
Brandon Vera like people thought he would, like I thought he would. And then in the third, he just comes out and finishes Brandon Vera. So I appreciated that aspect of the fight.
That's right. He baits people in like Anderson Silva. The only difference is he doesn't get knocked out. He is the greatest of all time, Ben Rothwell. I'm looking forward to his next fight. Give him Cain Velasquez next. He'll finish Cain in 5 seconds this time around. God damn it. He's the baddest man on the planet. Let's move on to Chad Mendes and Clay. Or actually, I didn't want to move on because I wanted to ask you guys, should Brandon Vera be cut now? After going, he has one loss since 2009, I think it was, or 2008 or 2009. Is it time to cut the guy who maybe has some of the most unrealized potential we've ever seen? I mean, he joined the UFC and people are saying he was going to be a 2-division champion. Now look at him. 1-4 in his last 5 fights. Come on, cocksucker.
I don't think they'll cut him, but they'll probably just let him know hey, you need to figure out what you're going to do. If you're going to stay, you need to win fights. If not, well, it's just going to let you go if you lose like another fight or whatever. But I don't think they'll just cut him immediately.
Well, I don't know, man. It's not looking too good for fucking Vera, dude. Isn't this like... I mean, everyone was talking him up after he fought Shogun, but even that was a fucking loss. It was just a fun... It was just... That time it was fun watching him get his ass beat. This time it was pathetic. I think he's done. He couldn't even stick down to that weight class. He had to go up to the fucking heavyweight division again or some shit. I'm done with him. I'm sorry. Love you to death. Go back to the gym. Just keep coaching. You know, he's done as a fighter. Come on. Ben Rothwell beat his ass. Show bum. Come on. I think it's over.
Yeah. You know, since beating Frank Mir at UFC 65 in a fight we look back at and think, how the fuck did Brandon Mira beat Frank Mir in a minute? He started off his career 8-0. Since then, he is 4-7. Because he's been fighting elite guys, and like I said, even more recently in his last 5, 1-4. So, you know, it's hard, and I sort of agree with Yao. He's sort of become, you know, such a part of the company. I mean, the guy's almost logged 20 fights in the UFC just because of that alone, and just because of his name. I think we see him in one more fight, maybe like a Facebook prelim fight. I mean, you know, this was a main card fight, and Ben Rothwell is the greatest fighter of all time, so maybe give him a lesser opponent, like an Elliot Marshall, see if he can pull another win out of his ass, like he did at UFC 137. Let's move on. Featherweight fight between Chad Money Mendez and Clay the Carpenter Guida. Mendez was the biggest favorite betting-wise on the entire card, and we saw why. Just Guida didn't really have a chance. And speaking of fights where you think of it and think, how the fuck did so-and-so beat so-and-so? How the fuck did Clay Guida beat Anthony Pettis? We'll get to that a little bit later. But Chad Mendez defeating Clay Guida the first time. I mean, Guida's got an iron chin. The dude was never knocked out or TKO in his entire career, and he suffered his first TKO loss at UFC 164. Chad Mendez, that strike that started it, that right hook, I don't think I've ever heard a louder punch on a UFC telecast. And I forget who was telling me. I think it may have been Ross. It was probably a combination both of Mendez throwing really hard leather and Guida just having such a hard head. But I have never just heard such a loud thwap of a punch. I mean, you know, if any punch was going to end Guida's streak of not getting KO'd, it was that one. And Mendez now, shit, he has 4 straight KOs, 3 of which are in the first round. I mean, if... I do think he deserves a UFC title shot now, but how crowded the featherweight division is, which is partly to blame with the UFC not matching top guys up against top guys, sort of like we see here with Mendez. I mean, who has Mendez fought in his last 4 fights? Yeah, they did give him Guida, which was a big step up, but before that, after he lost to Aldo, it was bums. It was Cody McKenzie, Yautzin Meza, and Darren Elkins, and because of that, now you have all these guys at the top of the heap. You have Swanson, Lamas, Edgar, Mendez, who all in a way deserve a title shot. Maybe not Edgar, but definitely Lamas, definitely Swanson, definitely Mendez. What goes down now? Who does Mendez fight next? I mean, no one really makes sense as the easy number 1 contender. If Aldo moves up, and I think it would make sense to have Lamas and Swanson for the championship and Edgar Mendez for the number 1 contender match, just because Mendez and Edgar have gotten recent shots at Jose. But, the featherweight division is probably the most muddled division as far as the title picture goes. The lightweight division's plenty muddled too, and we'll talk about it later. But, what do you guys think of the fight, and how close is Mendez to a title shot?
I'm going to go first so Ramses can just close the show. with his size.
Yeah, I would not want to follow Ramses after giving a spiel on Clay Guida. That's a good call.
Exactly. So the fight, I enjoyed it a lot. Mendez, in a way, he outclassed Clay Guida. He did. He did. He outclassed Clay Guida. He did whatever he wanted to. He took his time. And then the combination that he put Clay Guida away with was amazing. It was spectacular. I was inspired by it. It was great. I'm happy for Chad Mendez. I'm happy that Clay Guida was knocked out.
Can you fucking people believe that Clay Guida was he was ranked number 9 in the division going into this fucking fight. He was ranked in the top 10. Clay Guida. This fight went exactly as I expected it to. I thought maybe Guida would die. I thought maybe that would happen. Let me tell you, man, whoever the fuck beat him, Chad Mendez, God bless him, man. He did us all a favor here. Hopefully this is the end of Clay Guida. Hopefully he gets fucking cut. I'm done with his ass. He's a joke. When I saw him get knocked out, I just burst into tears. Actual tears of happiness. Hadn't happened in a very long time. I just started crying, man.
Didn't you cry when Son and Sub Shogun?
Yeah, I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's not often that I weep as a man here. But lately there's been a lot of good things going on in the UFC. So I saw Clay Guida get knocked out. Finally had it coming to him. And then I was so happy. I even later on that night, I haven't spoken to him since the divorce. It's been like 8 years. I called up my son and daughter. I told them I missed them. I loved them. I made some bullshit plans to have them over for Thanksgiving.
Oh my God.
But I was that happy. And I have to thank Chad Mendez and Clay Guida, man. Welcome to bum status. That's the word on the street.
Bum status. Yeah, Ramses, I'd heard you mention your kids a couple times before. I didn't want to ask, but it's really good you decided to do that. What do we do with the featherweight title picture, though? You got Aldo, who has pretty much cleared out the division. Even though you got all these guys at the top, he's finished. I mean, or not finished, but he's laid waste to all of them. I think. I'm not sure if Lamas has fought Aldo. I forget, but I think they have way back in the day. But either way, Aldo, we don't know how long he's going to stay at featherweight. He has expressed interest in moving up to lightweight now that his former scheduled opponent Pettis is the champion. Do we see Aldo move up? Dana's hinting that Pettis might move down. What do we do with these 4 guys who all, in a way, deserve a title shot, but are kind of just sitting around waiting to see what happens next? Lama, Swanson, Edgar, Mendez. What do we do with them?
I think we need to have sort of a lightweight, not lightweight, featherweight tournament, if you will, with the guys you just mentioned. So I think Edgar, Lamas, Swanson, Mendez, I think they all need to fight each other so you can really determine who is the number 1 contender. Because they're all pretty much in the same situation where they want to fight. They just want to fight, but there's no clear number 1 contender. So I think they all need to fight each other so you can figure out who is the number 1 contender.
That's right. Ramses, what do you think?
These divisions, man. Once it's below 170, I stop really caring. Tell you the truth, man. I'm not even going to lie. Who cares? These divisions are all thin, man. They're all thin. It's the same fucking 5 people fighting each other. I'm sick of it. That's all I got to say.
That's right. I have 2 words that could fix everything. Ladder match. Just put a ladder and put the belt, or put, a little briefcase or whatever the fuck you want to do. A shot at the belt, and just let them all get get in the cage and fight it out in a ladder match. That's how gentlemen solve problems. Let's move on to the co-main event. Josh Barnett defeating Frank Mir via TKO, a knee and punches, 2 minutes into the first round. A lot of people thought it was a controversial finish, though. Barnett drops Mir with a knee. Mir did go down limp, but after he sort of hit the deck, he kind of was scrambling for something, but the ref pretty much ended it immediately after Mir fell to the ground limp. Mir obviously said that he was unhappy with it. Even Josh said that he wasn't happy with it. But what did you think of the fight? Did you think it was an early stoppage? They really were scrapping early into the fight, which is one of the reasons why I wouldn't mind seeing a rematch, even though I don't really want to see a rematch. We will talk about the rematch later, but the fight itself was entertaining up until the early stoppage. What did you think of the stoppage? Was it early?
I don't think it was early, but Frank Mir, he has to blame himself. So from what I got at the post-fight press conference, he said that when he got hit with the shot, he dropped to protect himself. You can't drop like that and expect the ref to think, oh, he's dropping like that to protect himself. He dropped looking like he was knocked out. So you can't drop like that and expect everything to be okay. But set that aside, Josh Barnett, he did his thing. I was proud of him. I was pulling for him in this fight. I'm very excited to see who he fights next. I think he's going to fight for the title next year, 2014. And I can't wait to see it.
Early stoppage. We all knew where that fight was going. Mir doesn't got it. I don't think he has anything left, people. He's a jobber. I said it before the fight. I'm saying it now. He's just a jobber for the organization. And God bless him. He's a name. He was just making his goddamn money. So goddamn bless him.
Bless him, God damn it. And let's move on. We did get a friendly tweet from our boy at, what is the name again? At Medindeja. Follow this motherfucker. Medndeja. He's a funny motherfucker. Just quoted my quote of ladder match. That's how gentlemen solve problems. And it really is. When me and my roommate feel like, well, I took out the trash last time. No, I'm pretty sure I did. All right, let's get out the ladder. Let's do it. So that's really the way. But let's speak about Mir versus Barnett. Do you want to see a rematch? I'm really not sure if I want to see a rematch or not, because 99% of the times I'm not on the fence of a rematch. I don't want to see a rematch. We already saw the fight. Let both guys move on and, fight their fights. This one, though, I don't know if I'd mind. The first couple minutes were action-packed. And as far as what lays in front of them for both guys, the heavyweight division sort of has a lot of sorting out to do within itself as far as Kane and JDS. Who does Brown fight next? Who does Bigfoot fight next? Verdum, Big Nog, all these people sort of up in the air. I would like to see Barnett fight one of these guys, but as far as being against the rematch, it was so exciting. I still don't want to see it, but I wouldn't be as disappointed as I would be in the normal case of a rematch. If any of that made any sense, because I'm ridiculously stoned. Ramsey Seau, what do you guys think about Mir versus Barnett? Do you want a rematch or not?
Okay, I'm glad you summed it up, because I had no idea what the fuck you were talking about.
I had to direct it. Ramsey, I'm extremely stoned.
Right, Mir versus Barnett rematch? Are you serious? That was domination. Nah, man, Mir needs to fucking retire. He needs to get back on that motorcycle, try that again. He'll have better luck on that shit. It's done. Josh Barnett, man, he's come in shape next time, because they're not going to throw him another layup fight. Holy fuck, he looked like a hell demon. He
obviously,
shape, man.
Obviously, you've never seen him fight before, because that's Josh's MO. He does not walk in the ring looking like Todd Duffy. He walks in the ring looking like Josh Barnett. He's always sort of had the kind of semi-flappy titties, like a little bit of a love handle on the back. That's just his MO. He is not a very menacing looking dude, but he is pretty menacing. And I sort of agree also, Ramses, in that Josh would win again, because we saw Josh utilize his technique of tying up the clinch and going to town on him. When that's how Josh would win the fight. He got into the clinch pretty easily with Mir, and I think we just see more of the same in a rematch. Yeah.
Yeah, a rematch it doesn't make sense. Josh won that fight fair and square, and I think the same thing would happen again. Frank Mir is horrible in the clinch. Josh Barnett did a great job. The most impressive thing for me that I really appreciated was Josh Barnett kept his forehead and Frank Mir's chin in his face, his chin area the entire time. He didn't let off. When someone has their head in your face and in your chin like that, it's very hard and distracting to get it off. So he did a great job with that, and I think he just puts Frank Mir away again.
That's right. We all can agree on that. Speaking of rematches, the main event, we saw a rematch. And before I get into it, the Anthony Pettis submission on Benson Henderson, who we thought was unsubmittable. It's time for the goddamn stat of the day.
Stat of the day! Stat of the day! Stat of the day! Stat of the day! Here comes the stat of the day!
Benson Henderson was last submitted early in his career, about 6.5 years ago, before joining the WEC and UFC. Between then and the second Pettis fight, Benson Henderson had successfully defended 32 submissions.
Stat of the day! Stat of the day! Stat of the day! Stat of the day! Here comes the stat of the day!
And defending those 32, especially the really tough ones against certain guys like Donald Cerrone in their first fight, where Cerrone was bending his arms all sorts of ways. He earned the nickname Bendo for his inability to be subbed. We literally thought of him as the fighter with the greatest submission defense in the entire UFC, and he gets subbed out by Anthony Pettis, a guy who's not really known for submitting people. It was one of the most anticlimactic but climactic finishes of all time. It wasn't one of those where the whole crowd sees Benson's hand slapping Pettis and, Dean dives in and breaks him up, and it's, an easy-to-see sub because of the really weird position. Benson did really well those first couple minutes. Pettis swarmed him with the body kicks, and then Bendo tried taking him down, and once he got in Pettis' guard, it was all over. Pettis latched hold of the arm, at first started cranking on a shoulder submission. Ben turned the right way, and then Pettis worked on the elbow. I'm actually looking it up now, which is why I sound like a retarded person. It's not known yet what kind of injury he had. I was seeing if they had found that out yet. He obviously did have an injury to his right arm. Even in the post-fight interview, he told Rogan, when Rogan asked why his arm was in his shirt, Ben's like, yeah, my arm really, really hurts. So it's not yet released what sort of injury it is and how long he will be on the rack. But Pettis got Bendo with a verbal sub. You got to give Bendo and Pettis both a lot of credit. Before, Dean really didn't wave the fight off until both guys were walking away. Pettis could have kept on cranking and done lots more damage to Bendo's arm, while Bendo alternatively could have acted like he didn't tap and put his arms up like, what, I didn't tap, but both of them were gentlemen about it. When Bendo yelled, tap, 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 Pettis let go and walked away, as did Bendo, and Herb Dean waved off the fight. And with 30 seconds left in the first round, the fight was over. Everyone was like, what the fuck happened? But we knew, because Dean was waving his arms and Pettis had his hands raised, that it was a submission of some kind. What did you guys think of the fight? That was, like I mentioned, that was, the finish itself, that Pettis subbed Bendo is extremely, extremely climactic, but at the same time, watching it, there was no real moment to go, oh, the fight's over. They just sort of walk away, and it's like, all right, it's over. Like, that was so anti-climactic at the same time. What did you think of the fight? Yao, did you have a single tear rolling from your eyes as well? I would not want to follow Ramses on this fight either.
Yeah, I'm going to start first again. This fight was amazing. That's the only word I'm going to describe it with. It showed every single aspect of MMA. You saw the clinching, the striking on the feet, the ground game. You saw everything. It was great. I'm really happy that Anthony Pettis won that belt. I'm happy. I like him as a champion, and I didn't really like Benson Henderson as a champion. And you're right, Jake. You do have to give a lot of credit to both guys. Benson could have easily acted like he didn't tap, and Pettis could have easily kept cranking until the ref stopped it. But for me, I knew immediately that the armbar worked, because right after Anthony Pettis finishes it, he screams, "Woo!" And then I knew.
I never saw that.
It was so. Yeah, if you listen closely, you can hear him scream to the top of his lungs. For some reason, the crowd is like quiet, so you can really hear him scream, and then he starts running. Woo! So I knew immediately that he won, and that Benson tapped. I didn't know it was a verbal, but I knew that Anthony Pettis won because the way he screamed. So it was great. I enjoyed the fight a lot. It's a fight that a lot of fighters can learn from, and it was great. It was a great fight.
When I saw this shit go down, I was just crying and babbling to myself, tears streaming down both cheeks.
Damn.
Right? Both. Not just single tears this time. And look, people, Benson Henderson revealed himself to be the fighter that I've always thought he was and suspected him to be. He is now, of course, at bum status. And I know you guys don't believe me, but I swear to God, I'm about to throw a slab of fucking salmon on the grill right now. Right now on the podcast. I'm going to eat that shit. But while I was going to pick this up at the local market, on the intersection of the freeway, there was a red light. There was a bum begging for change. And it was a person that I believe to be Benson Henderson. All right, he even answered to the name Ben.
He is missing.
A couple bucks.
Yeah.
I'm trying to tell you. He is now at bum status in my book. This was great. He got what he deserved, all right? He was a boring champion. Boring-ass fights. This time he got faced up with someone that wasn't going to play his game, fight his fight. He got served, if that's even a cool phrase anymore. God bless Tony Pettis. He's going to stick around for a long time. Only good things from here on. Benson Henderson, that's what happens when your manager worships the devil.
God bless the devil. What's next for either guy now? You have Pettis, who is the champion. We don't know. He'll probably fight Aldo at some point unless either guy loses. You've definitely got sort of a clusterfuck at the top of the division, too. You got Gil Melendez, who will be fighting Diego Sanchez. You got TJ Grant, who makes sense as the next fighter for the title because he was supposed to fight Bendo originally. I bet Bendo wishes he would have fought Grant now. But as we all know, Dana paid off Grant to fake an injury and let Pettis take his spot and sell some tickets in his hometown of Milwaukee. You also have Rafael Dos Anjos, who just beat Cerrone, Josh Thompson. You have Healy and Khabib, which I truly think Healy is a future UFC champion. I think Grant gets the next shot at Pettis just because that makes the most sense. Grant already earned his title shot and should still get it. I think Benson should fight Josh Thompson. I think that would be a really fun fight. Josh and Benson both sort of took apart Nate Diaz, and I would be interested to see who would win, because Thompson and Melendez had a lot of wars. Melendez and Bendo had a war, so, one would only think that Thompson-Bindo would be a war. I'd like to see that fight. And the winners of all those fights would really sort of be at the top of the heap. The winner of Healy versus Nurmagomedov, the winner of Melendez and Sanchez, whoever Dos Anjos gets, and of course the winner of Bindo versus Thompson if they do indeed fight each other. It's a damn shame we don't have the winner of Michael Chandler and Eddie Alvarez in there too, but we all know Viacom is Satan, and that's all I really gotta say. I'm not gonna go on a Bellator rant, but who's next for either guy, Bindo and Pettis?
Yeah, you said it. I think Benson Henderson will fight Josh Thompson next, because they're not going to match him up with, like, Gil or anybody he already fought. So I think he's going to fight Josh Thompson, or he could fight Rafael Dos Anjos. So I think those are two possible opponents.
Those are really the only two fights that make sense for him.
Exactly. And for Anthony Pettis, he can do whatever he wants. He can fight anybody he wants. He can fight Aldo. He can fight, what is this guy's name?
Cain Velasquez?
TJ Grant. Or Cain Velasquez, hey. TJ Grant. Or he can even go to 170 and have a super fight with George St. Pierre. Who knows? But he can do whatever he wants.
Yeah, I'm usually thinking sort of outside the box. I love thinking about super fights. I love thinking about these, titans of each division going across weight classes to fight one another. We haven't really seen that much, if at all. We were going to see it in Aldo Pettis. We might still see it eventually in Aldo Pettis, but obviously that fight was scrapped when Pettis was injured. The first fight that popped in my mind after all this went down, the first thing that popped in my mind was, alright, the first time Aldo and Pettis were slated to fight, I had a really hard time picking, but I was leaning Aldo. Now, after that performance, Pettis all day. I think Pettis gets through him. Obviously, it would be a war, but he just looked so impressive. I'm definitely going to pick Pettis over Aldo now. And sort of that got my mind to wondering, damn, what about Pettis versus the welterweight champions? What Pettis Hendricks? That would be amazing. Pettis GSP, yeah, if GSP is able to get past Hendricks, blah blah blah. But GSP Pettis, man, think about that super fight. That would be a war. Yeah, I don't know. What do you guys, Ramses? What is next for Pettis and Bindo?
What's next for Pettis, man? He just got to his fucking division. He's gonna stick around and defend that shit. And he's going to beat every man they put in front of him. God bless him after this knee heals. He gets on that good championship-level drugs.
And speaking of his knee,
for Bindo?
I forgot to mention, Pettis also blew his knee out during the Bindo fight, but we don't know if it's a strain, a tear, what, he might be on the rack for a month, he might be on the rack for 9 months. Let's hope it's a less serious injury. He did seem to be walking around fine after the fight, but so did Connor, and he tore his ACL and is out for 9 months. Sorry.
He'll be back. Don't worry about Tony, man. Tony Pettis has got this shit figured out. He's been through worse.
You're really watching too much Sopranos, bro.
Second best show ever put on besides The Shield. Everybody watched The Shield. Anyway, Bindo, man, I'm done with him. Bum status, like I said. What's next for him? Maybe nothing. Nobody cares. Nobody's talking about it. Maybe if he's still at the freeway intersection, maybe I'll give him a couple more bucks tomorrow. That's all I got.
According to Ramses, the soup kitchen is next for Benson. Let's move on. One sort of question I did want to pose before we leave the whole topic of UFC 164, though. Man, I'm smoking really good weed. Jesus Christ. Who impressed you the most? There were lots of impressive fights. Obviously, Pettis joins Chris Weidman as the only two men to take the belt away from someone else this year. But you also had really great performances from Josh Barnett locking up the clinch from Dustin Poirier, from Big Ben Rothwell. Personally, I'm going to rule out Rothwell for my choice just because it's not fair. I mean, Rothwell would obviously be the most impressive fight in any fight he's in because he's the greatest fighter of all time. So I'm going to rule out Rothwell for my choice. I'm also going to rule out Soa Paleli because that was the worst victory performance I've ever seen. Both fighters deserve losses for that fight. But between Pettis and Mendez, I think it comes down to, for me, if I rule out Rothwell, I got to give it to Money Mendez. Just looking firecrackers. I mean, dude was landing shots, looked slick on the ground, looked slick standing up, and I wanted to wait until now to say it. Between all four featherweights, I think Jose Aldo beats Ricardo Lamas. I think he beats Cub Swanson. I think he beats Frankie Edgar again. I truly think Chad Mendez beats Jose Aldo the second time around. Team Alpha Male, Team Alpha Bang, whatever you want to call them now. They do make a pretty good point in that twisting knee that Jose used to knock out Mendez was very, very impressive, and I think Aldo probably would have won that fight either way. But if you watch it again, that twist is not 100% him. He grabs the cage and assists himself with it, so it's not really, it's kind of one of those things like he used an illegal technique to win Anderson Silva, but I don't know. But I do think Chad Money Mendez defeats Jose Aldo next time around. I think he was the most impressive performer at UFC 164. What about you guys? Who was your most impressive fighter on the card?
Tony Pettis, man.
Tony.
It's always a goddamn privilege watching this man perform, all right? As for Chad, it would be Chad just because I'm not a Clay Guida fan. It was a thrill seeing him get knocked out senseless, but it took Chad Mendez a little too long. I mean, I could have finished Clay Guida quicker than that. So for that reason, he was not the most impressive. I'll give it to Tony Pettis.
Tony. What do you think, Yao?
I'm kind of in the middle. I mean, both victories were impressive, but I'm leaning a little bit more to Anthony Pettis. That was an impressive victory.
Yeah, I mean, even the biggest Pettis fans probably weren't predicting Pettis to win in the first round. I mean, Jesus Christ. Well, you did, but Ramses, you're a special individual.
Goddamn right, son.
That's right. All right, let's move on to the news. But beforehand, we have a quick sort of abbreviated version of your favorite segment on the show. It's Yao's Training Log. That's right. It is Yao's Training Log. Our resident amateur fighter, Yao the Truth, talks to us about the trials and tribulations of being an amateur fighter. You aren't going to be fighting again until October, so training-wise, it's not as rigorous as it would be, but I did sort of want to focus on one thing. You're going to be changing up your diet this time around, correct?
Yeah, I'll be changing my diet completely. Yep.
You're going to be doing the paleo diet.
Yep, the paleo diet, sure.
What is the paleo diet for people who haven't heard of it?
It's a lot of people, they call it the caveman diet, if you will, where you're basically eating things that a caveman would eat, our ancestors. So it's basically anything you
Rocks.
think a caveman would eat. Yes, that's
bones,
true.
rocks, dirt. No, just mainly greens and meat, correct?
Yeah, some nuts, berries, greens. And
no processed shit.
Nothing. No rice, oatmeal, starch, granola, nothing.
Nothing.
And
so
straight water. Just straight water. No juice, milk, nothing.
Really? Wow, that's pretty interesting. Have you tried it before? Have you started it yet?
No, I haven't, but I'm actually starting this Friday. I'm going to move in slowly. By Friday, I'll be completely paleo diet.
So is this because, I know people who are addicted to candy and processed foods, and this would be a really big issue for them. I also know people who, pretty much eat, a lot of meat, a lot of greens, a lot of water. Is this going to be a tough or an easy transition to what you've been doing?
No, it'll definitely be a challenge because I eat everything, but I'm not addicted to anything. But it'll be a challenge, and I'm really doing it for to lose, some weight. I mean, I'm not overweight, but I'm going to use it for my weight cut that I'll have to do.
Yao weighs 300 pounds. No, Yao, you're weighing what nowadays?
165.
165, and you're fighting in October at what weight?
Either 141 or 151.
Okay. So, I saw your cheat day post after Grappler's Quest. It was all McDonald's and processed stuff. Are you going to allow yourself any cheat days, or is this going to be rigorous 24/7, no cheating?
No cheating at all. This will be straight up paleo diet until the day after the tournament is over.
How hard are you going to cheat the day after the tournament's over?
Very hard. But I hear that a lot of people, I've been doing my research, a lot of people actually don't have those desires anymore after they've been on a diet for so long. So I don't know yet.
Huh. Well, I guess there's only one way to find out, and that's to do it. The final thing I wanted to talk about. You mentioned, and I don't know if I read it wrong, you're not gonna try to cut any weight the next time around?
No, I'm not gonna. Yeah, you read it wrong, but it's fine.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to do any sauna or bath salts or anything. Like sitting in the bathtub or
do some bath salts, run around.
Yeah, that was an accident. I didn't mean to say that.
Yeah, if you watched, you did. You watched the recent Joe Lauzon training log where he himself was actually doing the Epsom salt bath for the first time. That looked miserable.
Yeah, the water is extremely hot. You're sitting in there, you're getting in, rubbing alcohol on yourself to open up your pores, getting back in, getting out. It's a lot, and I want to figure out. I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life, and I want to figure out the best way to get the weight off.
Actually thinking about that, Joe Lauzon came out flatter than I've ever seen him in a fight, and he did mention in the vlog that was the first time he tried the Epsom salt bath. Do you think that maybe had anything to do with his flat performance?
It may have. It honestly may have. I mean, losing weight like that, when you're sweating out like that, you're draining your central nervous system, and that's never a good thing to do. So it may have.
Yeah, cutting weight, they've talked about it on the Rogan podcast and other channels lots of times, but it's one of those things, it's almost like you wish the two people could shake hands and agree, hey, I can cut to 155 if I need to, you can cut to 155 if you need to, let's just weigh in at 165 before the fight so we're not miserable and drained as shit. But it's, one of these necessary evils, whether you're talking about MMA, wrestling, every sport does it. And it's definitely an interesting question because you got to cut a little bit of weight, and it seems like, well, the more weight I cut's the better because I want to be heaviest as possible on fight night. Not necessarily. You draw yourself out too much, and you just come out looking flat as hell. I have a thing. I never think that guys that miss weight will win. Because if a guy misses weight, what that means is he overshot it. He thought he would be able to walk in, to a lightweight fight and weigh 170 something, when in reality he couldn't cut all the weight, and he's drained himself out to the maximum and still can't cut the weight. When a guy has drained themselves out to the maximum, 24 hours before the fight, chances are they're not going to be 100% on fight day, and that's why these guys like Mike Dulce, who Chael Sonnen works with, Kelvin Gastelum works with, are really starting to turn into guys who are more and more valuable, because it's, really a fine science, and the more, and the better fighters get, the more finely tuned it'll get This cutting thing. I mean, what is the most you've ever cut in a single day?
The most I've cut in a single day was probably about 6 or 7 pounds, but I've usually done a 2-day cut or a 3-day cut. And one thing, you're right about everything you said, but one thing that would resolve that is if you had same day weigh-ins as the fight. It would force guys to fight at heavier weights and not cut as much weight. You know, if a guy like Uriah Faber, instead of cutting to 35, he may fight at 155 or 145 if the weigh-in was the same day as the fight. So when you have, 24 hours to put the weight back on, guys are like, let me cut more instead,
I almost feel like that might get dangerous, though, because you have just these psychos like Gleison Tebow and James Irvin and Thales Lates that will cut to the extreme, and I'm almost afraid if you had the same day weigh-ins, you would have these animals who aren't really that concerned about their long-term health and will try and cut a lot on the day of the fight and just suffer the consequences. I mean, a lot of these guys are just nuts. But what's the most you've cut on like a 2 or 3 day weight cut?
12 pounds.
Did you feel horrible?
I did. I just wanted to curl up in the ball and just lay there. But the day after, I felt great. I felt light. I felt fast, healthy, strong. So it wasn't too bad. It didn't last forever.
Word. Well, shit, this has been one of the longer Yao's Training Logs, but I think one of the more educational ones, because usually we just talk about training and stuff, but I feel like diet and, that part of the fight game is something that everyone can sort of talk about and what's the word I'm looking for? I'm so goddamn high, and sort of sympathize with, because we all gotta think about our diet on a day-to-day standpoint. But is there any other facets of the diet we failed to talk about?
No, not really. I think we covered everything. The paleo diet. Oh, is that how you say it? I forgot.
Paleo. Yep.
Yeah, paleo diet, and just thank you for having me again. Honestly.
Hell yeah, that was Yao's Training Log. You can listen to it every week, or at least when Yao can make it on the show. Because let's face it, this is a really, really late-running show, and we got people like Yao and Ross who've got to go to school. They got class, cocksuckers, so we'll try and move it along. First and foremost, though, let's get to the goddamn news. NBC is going to sue me so hard when they realize I've played the nightly news theme 60 times. Okay, first and foremost, today's biggest news, Sean Shirk retired. I don't think he's fought since 2011. He's definitely been on the rack for a while with injuries. But, yeah, Shirk, he's been saying he's going to come back, saying he's going to train. I'm guessing these injuries just have been too persistent. But Sean Shirk retires. A, why do you think he waited so long? And B, what's going to be Shirk's legacy in the UFC besides sort of a tainted championship because of testing positive for steroids?
I have no fucking idea who Sean Shirk is. I thought that was a color. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, the only thing I remember Sean Shirk for is losing to Frankie Edgar in a very one-sided fight. He retired. I don't know why it took so long. I do remember him saying he was going to retire. That's all I got.
I'm gonna remember Sean Shirk because my favorite fighter, BJ Penn. Shirk wasn't doing bad in his last 7 fights. He was 5-2. The only losses coming to Penn and Edgar, both men who would eventually get the title. Penn, just that knockout. Penn got on him. It was the very end of the 3rd round. Penn sees that Shirk sort of backing up and tired, and that he's about to run into the cage. He times it out perfectly, throws a flying knee that connects with Penn, sort of bouncing back forward against the cage, knocks him out. and I think the only UFC finish that officially was a knockout that ended 5 minutes into a round. I mean, I've seen plenty of finishes that, he finished him 4 minutes and 59 seconds in the first round. No, he finished Shirk 5 minutes into the third round. But yeah, that was a great fight. Shirk has seemed like a good guy, but sort of one of these guys who, unfortunately, even though he put forth an excellent career, he's 40 now, hasn't fought since 2010. That steroid testing positive for steroids after defeating Hermes Franca in the UFC Lightweight Championship at UFC 73. That's going to be the black mark on his record that all of us really think about a lot, unfortunately. Let's move on. Bellator. They're being so shady. We talk every week about Bellator being shady, whether it's fucking over Tyson Nam, fucking over Eddie Alvarez. They haven't tried to fuck over Ben Askren yet, but trust me, ladies and gentlemen, it's coming. Bellator is very shady. I think Dana White has called, what's his name, the son of the Winnebago man. That's really funny. I can't really think of his name. Bjorn Rebney, calling him a scumbag multiple times. And yet again, they're pulling a shady move. They pull their light heavyweight champion, Attila Vey, who is a pretty good fighter, a fighter I hope we see in the UFC eventually. They pull him from the pay-per-view so they can show Carlos Newton fight Muhammad Lawal. Whatever, that's great. They're more profitable guys. Cool, whatever, alright. Not only is Bellator doing this, though, they're stripping Vey of the title and awarding the title to the winner of Newton versus Mo, saying that Vey has an injury. Vey, on the other hand, is saying, no, I don't have an injury. I'm not injured. They just pulled me from the card because they wanted two Americans to fight on the card, more marketable dudes, and they want to give them the title because that makes the fight even more marketable. So they're literally stripping my title because I'm not an American and I'm not marketable enough. Bellator comes out saying, no, he's injured, he's lying. He's lying about not being injured. He really is injured, and here's a medical report to prove it. The medical report's dated. It's from like 5 months ago and says that Vey's going to be out like 5 to 6 weeks with a hematoma in his chest from a kick in his last fight. So all the medical report proves to us is that he's ready to fight now, would have been ready to fight a couple months ago, and the pay-per-view isn't for another couple months. So Bellator, I don't know if they think the whole world's stupid, Viacom just being shady, just another feather in the cap of why you should hate Bellator, why I hate Bellator. Please don't buy this pay-per-view, ladies and gentlemen. Ask a friend, ask if they know how to stream fights illegally, because you know what, I do think the UFC deserves money for what they do. Do I think the $60 pay-per-view price is ridiculous? Yes, but I cough it up every now and then because the UFC is a great company. Dana White and Lorenzo Fertitta might be businessmen, and they might not really care about the fighters in the UFC. I don't know if they do or not, but at least they're not openly fucking over every fighter in their... Oh, I'm getting heated up talking about this. I've explained it all, so I don't need to go on another rant against Bellator. Should Bellator even have a right to pull a belt from someone because they're not marketable enough? I mean, what the hell? I'm gonna smoke the bong and cool down a little bit while you guys talk about Bellator being shady scumbag sons of bitches. Don't buy the pay-per-view, ladies and gentlemen. Stream it illegally. I don't want a cent to be going to these cocksuckers.
Well, I gotta say, I can't blame Bellator for doing anything they do. It's they're fucking Apple competing against Microsoft, a prime Microsoft, you know what I'm saying? It's like Pepsi and Coke. You gotta live in a world with both. I don't blame Bellator, they're just trying to make the goddamn money. This fucking shit here, though, it's too... not enough input to determine what's really going on here is what I'm saying, man. We don't know enough yet. It sounds like there's something else going on that nobody's bringing up. It's being kept under wraps. This isn't just a simple, let's just strip this guy of the title and he's out. Nah, there's something going on here. I don't buy the injury thing. He might be a little injured, maybe, but trust me. We don't know the full story here, so I'm not going to even pass judgment on this. I'm just saying, man, we don't know a few things here. It's what it stinks of. God bless us.
Yeah, this is everything you said, Jake, is, I agree with completely. And it's kind of messed up how they can do that and put out a medical report that's obviously not to date. So, they might have the right to do it. Is it right morally and everything? No, but they might have the right to do that. They're paying him and everything, so it's messed up, but what can you do?
What can you do? And Yao, if I can just ask you to do one thing, it's to please never join Bellator. Even if they offer you a crazy contract early, just never join Bellator, because they're going to fuck you. You're going to rise up, win the featherweight championship, and then they're not going to let you leave. It's going to be some bullshit. So yeah, please never sign with Bellator. Actually a interesting story coming from a friend of mine about a current UFC champion. I'll leave it at there. A current UFC middleweight champion. That probably doesn't give it away. But a current UFC middleweight champion some time long ago, Chris Weidman, was offered a contract for Bellator, and he turned it down because apparently he and his people looked at it and said, this is messed. No way. We can't sign with these terms. Are you kidding me? Which, it's sad that not all of these guys have sort of the surroundings where they can have a smart lawyer look at it and say, hey, this is fucked up. But, this whole Bellator thing is so unbelievably shady. But Dana White made a good point recently. I think it was at one of the post-fight scrums, which if you don't watch the post and pre-fight media scrums Dana White does, definitely check him out. He talks candidly about everything from, Twitter wars with Kevin Iole to what he thinks about Bellator. He never pulls a punch. And what he said about Bellator is that, in order to make it work like the UFC, not only do you have to put a shitload of money into it, but you've got to do the right things for a long time before it gets big. And Bellator, time and time again, are just making these idiot choices. Whether it's, hey, let's make a Rampage Tito pay-per-view and not even say it's Bellator, just kind of make money on the names of Rampage and Tito. Just absolutely atrocious business skills, and I'm looking forward to everyone in Bellator going out of business because they're all cocksuckers. Let's get to the 10 seconds of sports where we talk about all sports, not MMA, but keep it to 10 seconds. I've been talking a shitload, so there's like water in my mouth and stuff because I'm also really high. I don't think I've mentioned that yet this episode. 10 seconds of sports, let's do it. The NFL season kicks off in 3 days right here in Denver, Colorado, where the Super Bowl champion Ravens take on the Denver Broncos, who are batted ball away from beating the Ravens in the playoffs. Very glad for the NFL season to be here. We also got a full slate on Sunday. Are you motherfuckers ready for some football? Because I sure as fuck am. Alright, let's move on. We got a couple more topics in the UFC world before we briefly break down UFC Fight Night 28. One of the most shallow cards we've seen in a while. Other than the top 3 fights, there's really nothing going, but we will talk about them. Let's get back to the news, though. Daniel Cormier demanding in his fight against Big Country Roy Nelson that Roy Nelson rubber band up his beard, braid up his hair on the sides, because he says it's going to be getting in his face and stuff. We saw similar things, I think, when Gray Maynard fought Clay Guida. He wanted Guida to put his hair in cornrows, and I think he ended up doing that. But do you guys think Daniel Cormier is actually worried about Roy Nelson's hair, or is this all just a mind game? Cormier seems like a tactician, a former Olympian. I think it's a little bit of both. I think he is a little bit worried about it, but I think he's definitely also doing this to sort of mess with Big Country again, who we're going to be talking about in our next topic as well for being in a Twitter war with somebody way smaller than him. But what do you guys think about Cormier? Really concerned, or is this all mind games?
No, I don't think it's mind games at all. I think he's actually concerned about his hair. I understand what it's like to, grapple or even fight with someone with long hair. It's really annoying. It gets in your face. It can get in your mouth, your eyes, everything. So I understand completely. If I were fighting Big Country, I'd want his hair tied up too.
This fucking guy, man. I understand where Daniel Carl Winslow Cormier is coming from, man. Who the hell wants to fight someone that, for all intents and purposes, appears to resemble a homeless man? Nobody, man. That disgusting beard, that stupid hillbilly rat tail mullet. Nobody. I'd feel disgusted touching that, man, let alone fighting that person. You don't know what they got. So yeah, it's the least he can do. He's just saying, at least groom yourself, you sorry son of a bitch. So I don't blame DC for this, and God bless him. Word on the street.
Word on the street. I'll fucking play the goddamn drop.
Word on the street. Word.
Oh, it was repeating there. But yeah, let's, Nelson has sort of been in the news a bunch lately for complaining about stuff and whining about stuff, so shoot, maybe this is just Cormier finding another reason to piss Nelson off. One of the things that Nelson's been bitching about, talking about...
It's disgusting. It looks like a fucking rat's nest.
Yeah.
Who the fuck would want to dump their fist into that?
A lot of people...
like dumping your fist into a toilet full of hair. It's disgusting.
A lot of people can grow a nice beard. Roy Nelson looks like a homeless person in the ring for sure. But hey, you know, that's got to be a lot of padding. I mean, when you grow out a beard down to like your titties, in Nelson's case, that is a lot of padding. It's literally impossible to throw an uppercut against a guy who's got a foot of beard under it. That probably, Nelson, I'm sure the commission doesn't comb through his beard before the fight. I'm sure Nelson packs a bunch of cotton up there. You know, he might put a Snickers bar there for after the fight or between rounds. The man's got a lot of room to hide stuff in that beard.
It's a rat's nest, man. Even a bird wouldn't raise a family in that shit. He would reject that as a home.
It's making me think of that Family Guy episode. Peter grows a beard and birds move in. Let's move past Family Guy, though.
A healthy beard. All right, let's move on.
Let's move on. Roy Nelson always bitching about something or another. And one of the things he's been talking about lately, saying, "Oh, if I was Uriah Faber, I would have had a title shot at this point. But I'm not a pretty boy like Uriah Faber, so I'm not gonna get a title shot because I say what the company doesn't like, blah, blah, blah." And Uriah Faber comes out and says what all of us are thinking. Hey, Roy, you know the reason why I get title fights and you don't? I win all my fights and you don't. Let's look at Roy Nelson's record. He's 4-4 in his last 8 fights, losing to JDS, Frank Mir, Fabricio Verdum, and Stipe Miocic, all in fights that were not title fights. That's 4 title fight losses since 2010, or 4 non-title fight losses since 2010. Uriah Faber, in his entire career, has never lost in a non-title fight. And that's why he gets title fights. Because, yeah, he might lose in a title, but guess what? He fights a few more times, 3 or 4 more times. He wins every fight, whether it's against Jorgensen, whether it's against Yuri. He wins every fight. And that's basically what he said to Roy. Roy, says something stupid and meat-headed, like, "Oh, he was nice to me last time I saw him. We'll see if he's as nice the next time I see him." And it's just like, really? Roy Nelson, are you that fucking stupid? And so, with all this talk about, oh, we'll see who's being nice the next time I see you, who wins in a fight in real life, Uriah Faber or Roy Nelson? You gotta keep in mind, this is a street fight, and Uriah Faber always surrounded with his little alpha male buddies. Roy Nelson seems like the kind of person who walks this world alone, not really a friendly guy, sort of a transient, a loner, a bum. But Uriah Faber, I think if Nelson tries him, I think Mendez throws a face punch while Uriah Faber locks in the rear naked choke, and Benavidez throws a leg kick, and in 3 seconds, Nelson's being choked out by a Faber. But if they bump into each other in real life, who do you guys think wins? Roy Nelson or the California Kid, Uriah Faber?
To be straight up, Ray Nelson wins, but I'd be pulling for Uriah Faber.
Keep in mind, they are fighting with street rules. No holds bar. And now that I think about it, they kind of have like the opposite nicknames. It's Big Country versus California Kid.
I don't know, man. This would probably result in some sort of outrageous stalemate if it happened on the streets, to tell you the truth, dude. They're both just... Uriah Faber, he's a fucking hobbit. Daniel, sorry. Big Country Roy Nelson. I was gonna call him because I have a friend named Big Country whose name is never mind. Doesn't matter.
He's also fighting Daniel Cormier. You should just start calling him Daniel for the fuck of it.
Yeah, Big Country Dan, dude. He would probably, I don't know, man. It's like a biker on meth versus like a roided up hobbit on the street with no rules. That's a tough call. That's something that I would actually pay money to see and cannot predict. UFC rules and shit, though, Big Country every time. Dan
beats Uriah Faber in a street brawl. I think that about does it for the news, so let's move on. We got UFC on Fight Night 28 coming up. Before we talk about the fights itself, one thing, if you look at the betting lines on UFC Fight Night 28, which I'm not a gambling man, but I do definitely look at the lines just to see who the experts think will win, who will lose. You'll notice that this is a very, very, very one-sided card. There are like no real close fights. Every fight, someone's plus 200, plus 300, plus 400. And obviously the UFC sort of has gotten to making their Brazil cards the one-sided cards. The ones where they make stacked fights, where they know one fighter will win and one fighter will lose, usually just to get the crowd into it, and the crowd is fiercely rooting for the Brazilian fighters. They'll very often put good Brazilian fighters against not as good non-Brazilian fighters just to get the Brazilians the wins. What do you think of the UFC stacking cards like this one? Should they worry more about making even competitive fights, or do they need to worry about ratings?
What? I'm sorry. One more time, man. Talk to me like I'm 5 years old.
The UFC's stacking these cards. They like the Brazil cards especially, they'll make fights where one fighter will obviously win. Like they'll stack them so the Brazilians will win. Do you think the UFC has an obligation to make more fights that are even? Because this is kind of unfair to a lesser opponent. I mean, if I'm a lesser American and I'm fighting a Brazilian who's way better than me, I'm kind of stoked to get the chance to prove myself, but it's not that fair that you're putting me against a guy who's way better than me just because he'll beat me and that'll amp up the crowd. Is the UFC more obligated to make close fights or more obligated to just worry about ratings and making people happy?
I get what you're saying. Good question, man. I'm glad you brought it up because I have to tell you the fucking truth here. Does the UFC have an obligation? The truth, man. The truth. There's a difference between the truth and the truth. I'm telling you the truth, man.
That's right.
The UFC has an obligation to not make fucking fair fights. They have an obligation, because they're a private company, to make fucking money. Alright? There's more money in letting the hometown fighters win in Brazil every time. This is simple economics here. And look, the bottom line is, any fighter they put up against a Brazilian in Brazil signs the dotted line and agrees to it. So, I mean, we can't really cry too much about it. Anybody that's fighting in Brazil knows the fucking deal. They knows they're just chum. They're shark bait, dude. They know what the fucking... Some of them even relish it. Some guys, they love the fact that they get a fucking, they get to just take a dive here and just collect a paycheck. No pressure if they know they're fighting in Brazil with an opponent that outmatches them. That's the real truth. The UFC's just doing what they got to do to make that fucking money. I don't blame them, because if you were in charge, I swear to God, every one of you would do the same thing. Word on the street.
Yeah, Ramsey's pretty much summed it up. I mean, the only thing I can add to that is, I mean, I remember there was one guy that even bet against himself because he knew what was going to happen. So
Wasn't Vinny.
it may have been. No, it wasn't him. It wasn't him. It was on the London card, I believe, when Stipe Miocic fought what is that guy's name? Stefan Struve or something like that. It was on that card, but yeah, when you're fighting someone in their own hometown, you know what's up.
Yeah, I'm looking at that card now and nodding. I'm looking at all the fights. You had Struve Miocic, Hardy Sadala, Pickett versus Jabouin. I could see that one being one-sided.
Can I just point out that it's ridiculous that anybody admitted to betting against himself? Nice try, yeah.
Yeah, actually, that would probably be a huge issue. Yeah, what the fuck am I thinking? Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm under the influence.
I actually got that from you, Ramses.
If any fighter ever bet against himself, I don't know why I didn't even really think of it, but if any fighter ever bet against himself, he would be probably stripped of his license forever. Like that would be
like something. That sounds like something ridiculous that I would tweet as being believable. So I don't blame you, yeah, and I do accept responsibility.
Yeah, that was UFC Fuel TV, September 2012. We were podding around then. You can listen to us break that shit down. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I think you were saying Kyle Kingsbury bet on himself to lose against Jimmy Manawa.
Yes.
Manawa tore him apart.
That.
I remember that.
Yep, it was that fight. Yep.
Ramses, did Kyle Kingsbury bet on himself to lose?
I have to go back, but I just want to point out that
Check the tape.
It's pronounced manure.
Manure?
Like you're from the ghetto and you're saying manure.
I think you're just trying to get me to say his name so it sounds like manure. I think it's Manawa. I'm pretty sure I've heard his name pronounced many times. But you know what? I'm fucked up, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get to UFC Fight Night 28 in Belo Horizonte. And we're going to see lots of Brazilians, not a lot of non-Brazilians. Let's talk about the prelims. We're going to have one Facebook fight, Yuri Villafort taking on Sean Spencer. And the crowd will undoubtedly be chanting at Sean Spencer, "You're going to die," and probably calling him a faggot in Portuguese. We're only going to have one Facebook card. We're going to have 4 prelims on Fox Sports 1. It'll be another welterweight fight, Keith Wisniewski versus Ivan George. You got a bantamweight fight, Lucas Martins against Ramiro Hernandez Jr. You got Joao Zeffirino taking on Elias Silverio. And the final fight will be a featherweight fight, Felipe Arantes, who's really the only name I recognize on this, taking on Edmilson Souza, who I believe was on a recent tough season. I'm not sure. I really have nothing to say about any of these fights. Like, literally. Like, I've never heard of half of the dudes. I don't really.
I don't even know what we're talking about, man.
The prelims. Yeah, Ramses, have you heard of any of these people? And if so, do you have thoughts on, any of this?
This fucking card is corny, dude.
One guy. Yuri Villafort, Black Zillion from South Florida.
Again with the
Look out for him. Look out for him. That's the only guy.
I believe the only one that I'm looking forward to is isn't Thor Trong fighting.
Thor Trong's actually fighting on the main card. We are going to talk about that yet. But of those 5 fights, anything else? Nope. All right, let's move on. Main card. Yeah, I mean, I've heard of these guys, but still not the best fights in the world. Flyweight, we got Marcos Vinicius facing Ali Bagatuanov, who I've never heard of. A middleweight fight between a couple guys I have heard of. Rafael Natal taking on Team Darkside's very own Thor Trong, the Hammer. We also got a lightweight match between Francisco Trinaldo and Peter Hallman. I know none of us probably have much to think about, the flyweight and lightweight matchup, but Rafael Natal versus Thor Trong. Ramses, does Natal have a fucking chance to win this?
No chance at all, people. Listen, Thor Trong is the only member of Team Darkside, Team Sonnen from The Ultimate Fighter Season 17, that I have not had on my podcast and interviewed. He's the only one. And let me just tear down the fucking wall here, tell you the truth here. It's because I was like, hey, Thor, man, I'd love to have you on sometime. I've had everybody else on, be an honor. And he said, fuck you. He said, I will come on the show when I am champion of the UFC. You son of a bitch, don't ever ask me again. Don't ever doubt me and play me out like this. And God bless him, he's going to win. I don't even know the name of his opponent, but Thor Trong is the real deal, greatest fighter in his division. God bless him. Only good things are going to happen. He is going to submit whoever the hell this poor bastard is, right there in front of his family, in front of his kids, in front of God, as his witness. Thank you.
And Thor did look good at his UFC debut at UFC on Fuel 9. I believe that was the Queen Latifah Gegard Mousasi fight where he beat Adam Sella. Going into Brazil, it is going to be an uphill battle. He's facing Rafael Natal, who is definitely a durable middleweight, and Thor will be somewhat of an underdog in Brazil, so he'll need to pull out an underdog victory. Yao, what do you think about this matchup between Trong and Natal?
As much as I like Thor Trong, I think he's being set up to lose to this Brazilian guy in Brazil. We see time and time again when the Brazilians have the Brazilian crowd behind them, they're virtually unstoppable. And I'm pulling for Thor, but I really feel like this Brazilian guy is just going to beat him.
Powerful words. Let's move on to the top three fights. Fights we can at least break down and talk about a little bit. You got Joe Benavidez, a fighter who a lot of people still think is the best flyweight in the UFC. He did lose the Mighty Mouse, but he might just be a win away from a rematch. He's going to be fighting Jussier Formiga, one of the top flyweights outside the UFC before the UFC opened up the division, and the top guys that they brought in at 125 were McCall and Formiga. Formiga definitely is a really, really good flyweight, definitely in the top 10, but Benavidez is just that much better. Benavidez and Johnson are just like these two titans who move down from 135, and none of these flyweights can fuck with. Benavidez, he I believe is currently the number 1 ranked flyweight, ranked just behind the champion Demetrius Johnson. Formiga's ranked number 5. Jussier will actually probably want this fight on the ground, even though I would say on the ground Benavidez has the advantage being a great wrestler, where Jussier has extreme jiu-jitsu skill. I don't think he'd really be able to threaten Benavidez. But Benavidez will want this fight standing. He has the tools to keep the fight standing. He's not, the only way the fight goes to the ground is if Benavidez takes down Jussier. Jussier won't be able to force it down, and Benavidez probably knows he has much more of an advantage standing up. He's really in the last couple years shown that he's not just a wrestler. He can bang with the best of them. I think we see a similar fight like we saw his alpha male teammate Mendez put it to Guida. I think he keeps it standing and puts Jussier out early in the first or second round. What do you guys think of this fight?
Benavidez? Let me tell you something. I don't understand how his girlfriend is so fucking hot, and I'm gonna steal her. That's all I have to say about Jiu-Jitsu. Thank you. Word on the street.
Not really sure how I follow that. Should have gone first, but yeah, I think Joseph Benavidez puts Formiga away easily. I think Joseph Benavidez is on the cusp of getting another title shot. You know, I don't think he'll win the title, but he'll get another shot, and I think he puts Formiga away.
I do too. I think he puts him away early. Let's move to the co-main event. You got a friend at Team Darkside, Yushin Okami, taking on one of the more dangerous Brazilians out there, Ronaldo Jacare Souza. I was talking about it with a couple friends, a couple pals, my pals Ross and Chris recently, and we all sort of agreed that in neutral turf, or in the U.S., or in Japan, Yushin Okami wins this. But fighting in Brazil, he's going to be really stoked up. I'm not sure when the last time Jacare Souza fought in Brazil was. I'll dig that up eventually. But it's been a while. I think he's going to be really stoked up. Jacare has really, in the last couple of years, talk about a guy who's gone from a one-dimensional to a multi-dimensional guy. Jacare really used to only be dangerous on the ground, especially after that loss to Luke Rockhold. He has turned into a killer standing up. He's really looked impressive with his boxing. Knocked out Derek Brunson in the first round in Strikeforce, and Brunson's not easy to knock out. I'll be rooting for Yushin Okami hard in this fight. I really hope he wins, but I have Jacare Souza winning this. He's brilliant on the mat, so we know if Okami takes it to the ground, that Jacare will probably find some way to find the advantage, even if he doesn't finish him. And standing up, Jacare's boxing has just looked so crisp. The only way I see Yushin winning this is if he's able to spend a good amount of the fight clinching up with Jacare, with his back against the fence, and just sort of working in those short strikes, keeping it within the clinch. I think Yushin could win that way, and I will be rooting for him, but I have Jacare winning this fight in his home country in Belo Horizonte.
Yeah, this fight is actually the fight I'm looking to most on the entire card. Jacare is one of my favorite fighters. Jacare is an extremely dangerous opponent for anybody at middleweight, at 205, at any weight class. I think he finishes Yushin Okami easily. I think he finishes him easily in any state or country or anything, whatever. But even more so in Brazil. I can't wait for this fight. I'm pulling for Jacare, and I think he's going to win by submission.
Jacare versus fucking who? I already fucking forgot, man. Let me tell you something. Jacare, I'm not believing the hype. Not one bit. Who the fuck was he fighting? I am now smoking weed too.
Yushin Okami?
Oh yeah, my friend Okami. Listen, Okami, here's the bottom line with him. He is a jobber for the UFC, alright? I'll say that outright. He's a jobber. But the thing with jobbers, every now and then they gotta collect on what's owed to them. And he's got a victory coming his way. He's probably going to knock out this Jacare bum round 2. Round 2, Okami will knock him out. That's the word on the street.
Yeah, both of these guys on impressive stretches. Jacare on a 4-fight win streak. His last fight, a first-round technical submission arm triangle choke against Chris Camozzi in his UFC debut back in May. Yushin Okami on a 3-fight win streak, most recently defeating Hector Lombard in a split decision back in March. This is going to be Jacare's first fight in Brazil. He actually fought this past May in Brazil, but before that he hadn't fought in Brazil since like 06, 07. when he really wasn't that well known before he joined Dream and all that good shit. Let's move on to the main event. Glover Teixeira, he's a heavy favorite in this fight against Ryan Bader. Glover's a guy, I think he's ranked third now in the light heavyweights. Yeah, he's third. Ryan Bader has sort of now been pushed out of the top 10, losing to Lyoto Machida, and now with the rise of Chael P. Sonnen. His last win was an impressive win. I think it was the quickest submission in light heavyweight history against Vladimir Matyushenko. Got him within 50 seconds with a guillotine choke at UFC on Fox, Johnson vs. Dodson. Before that, he had that brutal, just cold KO to Lyoto Machida. Glover, he joined the UFC back last year. He's won 4 fights since, destroyed Kyle Kingsbury and Fabio Maldonado, had a sort of boring fight against Rampage, and then submitted James Tehuna via guillotine halfway into the first round at UFC 160, one submission of the night. Glover's going to win this one all the way. Sort of the same thing as Benavidez versus Formiga. Bader's a good fighter. He's not a bad fighter. Just Glover is that dude. I think he could score a knockout on Bader. We saw Bader get knocked out with a front kick from Lyoto Machida. But I'm actually predicting a submission. Second round submission. I'll call it another guillotine choke, like he got against James Tehuna just a few months ago back at 160. Another submission of the night. And, a win here, I think, might earn him a title shot. Think about it. He's fighting Gustafsson next. Who makes the most sense after Gustafsson for a title fight? Glover. Glover's probably the guy, mainly because all these other guys who are making up the top 5 have fought Jones before and been annihilated by him. So, this might be the last fight Glover needs before title shot, but I think he gets through Bader without too much issue at all. Sort of, another one of these stacked fights where they're just feeding a American to a Brazilian to get the loss, which actually kind of puzzled me about Benavidez Formiga, because Formiga's obviously going to lose to the American. That was kind of, a bizarro fight. But in this one, we'll see what we usually see, a Brazilian just murdering an American who's not as good as him.
Yeah, you basically summed it all up, how it's going to go. But I agree. Yeah, I think Glover Teixeira will beat Ryan Bader in impressive fashion to be his style. So, I'm going with Glover Teixeira on this one.
Yeah, I don't have much to say about this. This is the worst main event since that fucking guy in Switzerland, Sweden, whatever, made his debut, and he was on the main card, fighting another guy making his debut who was the training partner of the guy that was supposed to be his debut. The Latifa versus, who was the other fucking guy? Mustafa's. Yeah, Mustafa, man. Yeah, whatever, Mufasa, dude, whatever. Mufasa versus fucking, the fucking Queen Latifah. This main event is even worse, man. Who the fuck? Nobody cares about these people. Nobody. Yeah, that's it. Bullshit. I don't care who wins. Nobody cares.
Nobody cares. That would probably be a good mantra for the MMA podcast, which, now that we've broken down the fight, is coming to an end. Whoops, I was not trying to play Word on the Street. I was trying to play the theme music right here, which is, I don't mention it often enough, this song is Jiu-Jitsu by Smoke Serpent, a band with Eddie Bravo in it, a guy who we've had on the show before. We look to get on again. Definitely, once we get into the groove of things, we definitely look to start having more guests on more regularly, starting next week, actually. So follow us on Twitter. Stay tuned for who we'll get as guests. We also have themmapodcast.com if you want to check the latest news, both about our podcast or just news on MMA. Check that out. And check out our friends who weren't able to make it tonight. That's at C. Lowenstein, at Ross Finkelstein, E before the L, at Wes Lynn, Eagle AH, at MMA Mental, at J Jeans. Follow all these cool motherfuckers. You can also listen to The Final Round and MMA Mental. The Final Round being Ross's baby every Wednesday. Listen to it after this coming UFC fight night. And MMA Mental, you can follow him on MMAmental.com. Also a shout out to the two beautiful motherfuckers who made it on tonight. Ramses, remind these motherfuckers what the word on the street is.
Follow me on Twitter, The Aunt Jimmy Show. Look, man, an old man got out of his wheelchair on the streets of Austin, Texas today just to thank me for tweeting and just doing what I do. Old man. He said I haven't walked in over 35 years. That's the word on the street. The Aunt Jimmy Show.
Word on the street, getting old bitches out of wheelchairs. Yao, what's the truth?
The truth is, you can find me on Twitter and follow me at Yao_the truth. YAO_the truth.
You heard it here first. Future UFC champ. He's not a future Bellator fighter because he doesn't want to get fucked over. Thanks so much for listening to the MMA Podcast. You can listen in. We're probably going to do another show this weekend, and then we'll regulate the schedule. We'll let you know what we're doing. But when you do listen, you can always call in. The number's always the same, 213-457-3380. Put that in your contact list. Bookmark themMApodcast.com. Follow the MMA Podcast on Twitter. Subscribe to us on iTunes. If you're listening to us on YouTube, click that thumbs up button. Click the subscribe button. We appreciate the shit out of all of you. We'll be around for a while. We'll see you next week. Until next time, we go!
These idiots caught up in all their ignorance. Two clans fighting under the same banner. We all got love for this ground game, and that's all that matters. In the balance, the teachings of the Grand Master. I'm trying to master the system, that's what I'm after. And stay true to the craft, spark trees to relax. Old school miracle, lace in the track. And I'm working the angles on me sharp and precise, man. Back in the day when I was learning to rock in this mic, paying homage to the classic shit. Dilated, undisputed heavyweights repping Los Angeles. And yeah,